Indigo entered the pod and threw down her skybike helmet with a loud thud.
I found it.
Found what?
Bracken turned over on the sleeping divider to face his girlfriend. Normally, he would have been happy to see her. She was a very attractive young woman, with jet black hair, blue eyes, and a beautiful smile. However, today he was in a bad mood.
Jeez, can't you be a little less noisy when you get home? You know I've been scouting all night.
The rebel leader had been sleeping soundly when Indigo returned home, and his scratchy mood was no better for being woken up so abruptly.
I was just about to tell you. I found out some information that might help you to locate your sister. But if you don't want to hear it, that's fine by me.
What? Are you kidding me?
Bracken jumped up from the sleeping divider to join his partner, who was now sitting on the air couch with an angry scowl on her face.
I'll only tell you if you don't jump down my throat the next time I come home with something interesting to share.
Sorry, babe.
Bracken put his hand behind Indigo's head and started running his fingers through her long hair. He now felt a little guilty for being so offhand, when all she was trying to do was help him.
Well, it took a bit of sneaking around. With the way things have been at the water station since the world controllers left Earth, no one noticed me slip into the archives department. It seems that on the night your sister went missing, a large payment of water was released to a law defender's pod. 15 liters to be exact.
Wow, that's a large payment for someone in his position. Did you note down his address?
Of course, and his name.
Well, I think we might pay a little visit to this law defender, see why he's so special that night. Great scouting, babe.
Bracken stood up and went to get a drink from the bar dispenser. He punched in a code, and 2 shot glasses of amber liquid appeared from the hatch.
I think this new information deserves a toast.
He handed Indigo her glass of synthetic bourbon, and they clinked them together before enjoying the rare occasion of an alcoholic drink. This treat was normally only observed for birthdays and Christmas, but after searching for so many years with no leads as to what had happened to cause his sister's sudden disappearance, this news was worth celebrating. 4 hours later, under the cover of darkness, the pair made their way over to the other side of the city. Bracken had armed himself with a laser gun he had acquired several nights beforehand from a not-so-clever droid, and Indigo had a stun needle that her sister, Crimson, had smuggled from the hospital where she worked as a nurse. It didn't take them long to locate the law defender's pod. They had already planned how they could explain why they were visiting him at that hour of the night. Indigo pressed the intercom button and spoke. However, when there was a reply from the other end of the receiver, neither rebel could make out what the muffled voice was saying, so they were not prepared for who they saw when the door was eventually opened by an elderly woman.
Who did you say you were again?
The old woman asked this question while she stood eyeing them wearily from the doorway. She seemed a little nervous at seeing strangers there after dark.
We're from the water board, ma'am, and we're looking for L.D. Jameson, 638.
Bracken smiled down at the fragile old woman. He wanted to gain her trust so that she would let them inside the pod.
That is my grandson's name, but he isn't a law defender anymore. You had better come in.
The pair were shocked when they stepped inside the pod. It was dimly lit and dirty, really not a place for a fragile old lady to be living.
Jameson is on his divider.
She pointed a shaky hand to the partitioned area on the other side of the main living space. As they moved towards the divider, Bracken really wanted to pull out his laser gun, but he didn't want to frighten the old lady. They proceeded with caution to face the law defender, and both rebels were truly shocked at what they saw next. The man lying on the divider was no threat to them, nor for that matter would he have been a threat to anyone. His withered, thin frame was not that of a law defender, but of a broken man. He looked up at them with a vague expression upon his face, as if he was totally unaware that they were strangers.
What's wrong with him?
Bracken couldn't help asking the old lady this question while she stood quietly next to them, looking down at her grandson with sad eyes.
No one really knows how it happened exactly, young man. It has been 9 years since Jameson was found lying on the floor of his pod with an empty water bottle next to him. He has been paralyzed ever since. The doctor said he had been poisoned by the coronium bromide, and there was nothing they could do for him. They found traces of the drug in his bottle of water, but there was never an investigation into how it got there. I'm his grandmother and only living relative, so after the accident I came here to care for him.
Bracken looked at Indigo in total disbelief. Was this some sort of mistake? Or had the world controllers planned to silence the law defender by delivering him with a lethal dose of the neuromuscular blocker through his water supply? As if reading his mind, Indigo nodded to Bracken in confirmation. She had heard through her contacts at the water board that there had been several mysterious deaths which may have been linked to her place of employment. But the cases were never properly investigated, so the likelihood that this man had become a target by the establishment for whatever reason was a strong possibility.
Can he speak at all? I need some information from him, which he may be able to help me with.
He speaks a little when he is spoken to. However, a normal conversation would be taxing for him, but you can try. What is it you need to know?
My sister went missing 9 years ago, and I think your grandson may hold some information about her disappearance.
Bracken thought it safe enough to confide in the old woman. She seemed quite harmless and willing to help. Jameson's grandmother looked down at her grandson with sad eyes before replying.
I see. Well, before his accident, Jameson never really talked about his job as a law defender, nor did I never ask him about his position. I think that he has regrets about his former employment because some nights he has nightmares and cries out in his sleep. I'll leave you to talk to him, but please do not upset him because he is very hard to settle again when he gets distressed.
Bracken nodded to her and went close to the divider so that he was in eye contact with Jameson once more.
Sir, I need you to cast your mind back to the night you got a large water fill. I'm trying to find my sister, Teal. I think you might know what happened to her. She was 15 years old at the time.
Jameson just looked up at the younger man with a blank expression on his face. It seemed as if he was not registering anything that Bracken was telling him. The rebel leader was not prepared to give up so easily.
Teal has brown hair and green eyes. At the time she went missing, she would have stood about 154 centimeters high. She may have left our pod that night, out looking for me. My name is Bracken, sir.
Still, the man on the divider just looked up at the rebel leader blankly, as if he was totally oblivious to what was being relayed to him.
It is no use, Bracken. He doesn't look like he can remember anything about that night. Teal may as well have never been born, going by the look on this law defender's face.
Suddenly, as if Indigo had triggered something in the back of Jameson's mind, he started to cry out in a frustrated voice.
Teal reborn. Teal reborn. Reborn.
Jameson's grandma hurried over to his divider.
There. It is all right. Hush now. You don't need to worry, Jameson. I'll ask these people to leave you alone.
Bracken put his hands in the air, surrendering to the old woman's request, as she turned to face him with a menacing glare.
I told you not to upset him. He mentions the word reborn a lot in his nightmares, and also a word that sounds something like Judason. I have no idea what he's talking about, but it takes me a long time to settle him back to sleep. Now I'd like you to leave, please. You have caused me quite enough trouble tonight.
The rebel leader didn't need to be asked twice. He nodded to Indigo, and they made for the door, while the old woman took a seat on the divider and cooed softly to her grandson, trying to calm him down again. Bracken was at a loss as to why the law defender should suddenly start acting as he had. While they put their skybike helmets on, he asked Indigo if she had made the same assumption as he had about what the law defender was trying to tell them.
It sounded as though he was saying Teal reborn. What did you make of his words?
Yes, that's what I thought too. Wasn't Reborn the name of the spaceship the world's controllers left Earth on last month?
I think so. If I remember correctly, it's a hibernation ship for long-distance space travel. When I was on patrol with Amos last week, he was telling me about that exact ship. He said that his father had outfitted it with a large amount of hibernation capsules over 9 years ago.
Bracken suddenly looked at Indigo with a sparkle in his eye. This fresh information may be another valuable clue.
Do you think Teal may have been sent away on that ship, Bracken?
I have no idea, but it seems as if the clues are stacking up quite nicely. Whether this new information leads to a dead end or not, it is worth some more investigation. I'll stop by and see Amos tomorrow and see if he can shed any more light about the Reborn. Right now, let's go home. I am definitely needing some more sleep.
The following day, Bracken headed over to the rebel hideout. Amos usually spent most of his non-working day there, planning their next raid. Unlike Bracken, he didn't have a partner, so after he finished his job at his father's business, he was pretty much a free agent and did as he pleased. The rebel hideout was really just an old, disused warehouse on the side of town that was abandoned by most people. Even the law defenders never went there. The only humans that frequented this zone apart from the rebel group were homeless folk who couldn't afford to rent a pod. They tended to hide away when Bracken or any of the other rebels showed up. There seemed to be a mutual understanding between the illegal group and the homeless people. The rebels were left to their own devices in this forgotten part of the city. However, the homeless folk were paid handsomely to hold their tongues because the rebels ensured parcels of food and other useful items were left out each week for their silent hosts. When Bracken entered the hideout, Amos seemed pleased with himself about something. He was grinning from ear to ear as he greeted his friend.
I've just figured out how we can siphon water from the holding tank on 74th Street into the hideout, and they will never know where it disappeared to.
That's awesome, Amos, but I need you to focus your thoughts on something else that came up last night.
Better be friggin' important to overshadow my latest achievement.
Amos was a little taken aback by his friend's eagerness to change the subject so quickly, given how valuable synthetic water was to obtain.
Yeah, well, the search for my sister has been the most important part of my life. I think we might be close to a breakthrough. I've got some fresh information as to what may have happened to her.
Go on.
Both men took a seat on the worn-out air couch that had seen better days, while Bracken told his friend everything that had happened the previous night at the Law Defender's pod.
So, you see, I was hoping you'd be able to find out some more information about the Reborn from your father. I need to know if the Reborn has ever left Earth before last month, when the world controllers departed on it.
I don't need to ask my father about the Reborn, Bracken. I was with him 9 years ago when he went to the final checks on the hibernation capsules, before it left Earth on its maiden voyage.
Did you know who was on that mission, or where it was heading?
No, well, not really. I did overhear the medical officer from the ship saying something to my father about night walkers and takers. I thought it an odd thing for him to mention, but I was only young then, and I didn't really comprehend what he was talking about.
This whole thing with the Reborn is getting crazier by the minute. I wonder who else we can ask about the mission 9 years ago. To quote my great-grandfather saying, "I can smell a rat."
Amos looked thoughtfully at his friend before replying.
I know of one person that might have some answers for you, but whether you can get him to talk might be a little harder. His name is Zacharias 393, and he is a trillionaire. We are outfitting his spacecraft with hibernation capsules at the moment. He might talk with you, given that he is mighty pissed with his friend, the Evaluator. Seems when the world controllers left on the Reborn, Zacharias was not included. He wanted to take his family, and they wouldn't let him. He has purchased his own spaceship and plans on following them. So I assume he knows more information about the Reborn than anyone else that I can think of.
Did he say where he's flying to when the ship is ready to launch?
A planet I've never heard of before. Now, what was that name?
There was total silence in the room as Bracken waited eagerly for his friend's reply.
From memory, I think he called it Judason.
Jeez, that sounded like the name the Law Defender's grandmother was saying he kept repeating all the time. I really think we're onto something here. How do I go about meeting this rich dude?
2 days later, Bracken accompanied Amos as they entered the compound where Zacharias' spaceship was kept. Although it was commonplace to see smaller spacecraft flying throughout the city, this was the largest ship Bracken had seen from a close range. Amos told his friend that this ship was only a tenth of the size of Reborn, but it had cost the Tycoon plenty to purchase it.
This spacecraft can only house 25 hibernation capsules. If memory serves me right, the Reborn have close to 250 capsules. My father spent over a year helping outfit the Reborn. It was quite an exercise, that's for sure.
It seems like a whole lot of people to move in one shipment. Let's hope Zacharias can shed some light as to why they were moving such a large contingent of people on a mission.
At first, when Bracken left Amos to his work and went to speak with Zacharias, he didn't think the Tycoon would talk to him. However, as soon as the young rebel leader mentioned Judason, Zacharias seemed happy to open up about his mission.
That darn lousy 2-bit friend of mine shat on me big time. The Evaluator said if I helped him fund their voyage to Judason, I could join him and the world controllers. He was nothing but a liar. As soon as I said I was taking my family too, they left a day earlier than our scheduled departure. Hence why I'm readying this ship now.
Why Judason, sir?
Because they've already colonized that planet. A city's been built and everything has been made ready for them to move right in.
How was the city built?
You ask a lot of questions for a young man. Get to your point, son, because I ain't got time to play games.
Zacharias looked Bracken up and down with a hint of suspicion in his eyes.
I have reason to believe my sister may have been on the Reborn when it left Earth 9 years ago. She went out at night looking for me and never came home again. I need to know what happened to her.
Yes, well, family is pretty important. I can see what you're saying. But unless your sister was a Nightwalker, she shouldn't have been on that ship.
I don't understand. Amos mentioned something about Nightwalkers to me yesterday. What is the connection?
The world controllers sent a larger group of them, along with takers, to colonize and build a city on Judason. It seems the establishment thought they'd make use of their criminal activities towards a positive goal. If you say your sister was out after dark looking for you around then, she may well have been mistaken for a Nightwalker. And dare I say it, the Evaluator wouldn't have listened to a word she told him anyway. I mean, look at the way he treated me, and we were supposed to be friends. If she was caught and taken to the Defender station, she may well have ended up on the flight.
Well, if she was on that ship, I need to go with you to Judason and find her, sir.
What? Now, hang on a minute. What makes you think I'm going to let you travel to Judason with us?
Because, if what you say about the Evaluator is true, sir, he and the world controllers might not be so pleased to see you crashing in on their party. Let me tell you a little about myself and my group. I'm a rebel leader, and we've been fighting against the establishment for a long time now. My colleagues and I will happily defend you and your family should you run into any trouble at the end of your journey. I gather, going by recent events, you would not be in such a hurry to leave Earth if you didn't have a good reason to. We have nothing to lose by joining your mission, or should I say, evacuation. Isn't that why you're leaving Earth? It's dying. This is why the world controllers have fled and left the rest of us to perish. If we stay here, we die. If we come with you, we may still die, but at least we have a fighting chance to live.
I like you, Bracken. You're smart beyond your years and don't hold back from calling the shots as you see fit. I had wondered about the protection for my young family should things get a little antsy when we arrive on Judason. I only have one droid, and should we be in danger, he's not been programmed to defend us. How can I trust you, though? I've become wary of everyone, now I've been misled by a good friend.
You can't, sir. Other than trusting my intentions are honest and given with respect for you and your family's safety, first and foremost.
Well, we are leaving in 4 days' time. If you can come up with weaponry and willing group of fighters, then I might consider taking you. I'm also looking for someone with medical knowledge. It doesn't have to be a doctor. A nurse should be adequate enough for the job. You got anyone in mind?
Consider it done, sir. I have just the people you're looking for.
Bracken shook the Tycoon's hand and departed the spaceship's hangar with refreshed hope. He now had to relay the information to the other rebels and hope that they were willing to join him. He knew he wouldn't have a problem getting Indigo's support, but it might take a little convincing to get Crimson to join their mission as their medical personnel. That night, at the rebel hideout, everyone seemed most vocal about the mission when it was revealed to the group. There were several rebels that wanted no part of the plan. For whatever reason, they thought they would take a chance that the stories about Earth dying were not true. Bracken wasn't going to argue with them. If they were not prepared to fight, there was no use taking them anyway. Surprisingly, Crimson seemed very supportive of the idea. She was fed up with the senior nurse in her department, and given that her sister was on the mission, and with no family to speak of, she was more than willing to leave Earth behind. Amos had already told his father he was leaving, and his father seemed very supportive of his son. He added that once he was able to, he and Amos's mother would get on another ship to join them on Judason at a later date, should one become available. After the meeting, 14 of the members had chosen to join Bracken on their mission. The rebels also planned on breaking into an arms warehouse the next evening to equip themselves with the laser guns they'd need to take with them. Crimson said she was happy to obtain anything she could get her hands on from the hospital supply room. So, everything was falling into place nicely. That is, everything was thought to be falling into place. No one was aware of the 2 homeless people who had crawled into the air conditioning duct within the hideout's ceiling. They had heard everything that was said at the meeting, and they wasted no time in informing the rest of the hobos about the fact that Earth was dying. Once the rebels had obtained all that they needed for their mission, the day before they were to depart, Bracken, along with Amos, Indigo, and Crimson, went to the ship's hangar to check in with Zacharias. As he showed them over the ship, the Tycoon seemed well pleased with Bracken for keeping to his word. They arranged with Zacharias that they would be there early the next morning. Just before they were to launch, Crimson needed to make the last few settings to the hibernation capsules for the rebel crew. It was her job to obtain the weights of all the rebels to be transported and key in the codes for the vitamins and minerals they would receive during the long flight. This task had already been completed for Zacharias and his family, so it wouldn't take Crimson too long to add in the extra passengers' information.
Apart from the job you have to finalize tomorrow morning, Crimson, everything else has been put into place for us to launch at 1100 hours.
How did you manage to obtain the coordinates for the flight to Judason, sir?
Money talks, son. When I offered the Grand Engineer from the Reborn enough money for a year's supply of water, he was most happy to download the file onto my data watch. But I don't want you getting any silly ideas about me paying you extra for our protection when we get to Judason.
Hitching a ride with you is the payment, sir. That is all we shook hands on, and that's all I'm asking for.
Very well, I'm glad to hear it. Now if you can have everyone here by 700 hours in the morning, I'll bid you good day.
The following morning, there seemed to be an eerie silence when the 15 rebels left their hideout for the last time and made their way towards the flight hangar. No one spoke. All members were lost in their own thoughts about the mission ahead of them. It seemed surreal leaving Earth behind and heading to a planet they knew nothing about. But with the slight fear of entering unknown territory, there was also excitement for what lay ahead of them. Little did the group realize that they were being followed. Once they were on board the ship, Crimson made her way to the rooms where the hibernation capsules were stored. She started inputting the codes for each of the rebels. However, as she had almost finished keying in the numbers for Indigo's capsule, there was a loud commotion coming from outside the ship. It sounded as though they were under attack. Sure enough, as she raced to the entrance door to see what was happening, Bracken, Amos, and several of the other rebels were standing there returning fire. When he saw what was happening, the ship's captain grabbed Crimson by her shoulders and pulled her back inside the door, out of harm's way. There was up to 20 hobos in front of the ship. They had come rushing into the hangar bay, brandishing any form of weapon they had managed to lay their hands on. They had certainly taken the rebels by surprise. Thankfully, their weapons didn't include laser guns. However, because the rebels were taken unaware, the hobos managed to kill several of the ground crew and injured one of Bracken's group before the situation was under control. There was no way the hobos could outmaster the laser's firepower, and soon they were all lying dead at the front of the ship. Bracken raced across the hangar to help their injured man towards the spaceship so that Crimson could treat his wounds.
Who the hell told the hobos about our mission?
Beats me. But I hope there are no more behind them, because this is not a good start for our departure.
You are darn right there.
Zacharias stood at the entrance to the hangar, looking most displeased at the view in front of him. His mother, wife, and 3 children were gathered behind him, looking totally traumatized at the sight of the dead bodies lying motionless on the hangar floor in front of them.
I'm sorry, sir. Can't understand how the homeless people got wind of our departure. But now we're aware of them. We'll stand guard at the entrance doors until the ship is ready to leave.
We'll make sure that you do.
The tycoon looked at the rebels angrily as he hurried his family past the dead bodies and onto the ship. After Crimson had finished tending to the wounded rebel, she finished keying in the rest of the codes, and then set about settling Zacharias' family into their capsules. There was a bit of a protest from the tycoon's youngest daughter as she looked with fear at the large, silver, coffin-like bed in front of her.
Why do I have to go in here, Daddy? Can't we just spend the year in the spaceship without lying in this scary thing?
Zacharias' daughter looked up at her father with pleading eyes in the hope he would change his mind about their travel plans.
It is okay, sweetheart. We're all going to sleep at the same time. That way, when we arrive at our new home, we'll be nice and refreshed from our long sleep.
The young girl didn't look convinced at what her father was saying, but she did as he had instructed, and soon she was asleep in her capsule. Thankfully, no more homeless folk showed up at the hangar bay, and at 1100 hours sharp, the ceiling of the hangar was opened by the remaining ground crew, so that the spacecraft could slowly rise upwards. As the ship departed Earth's atmosphere, the rest of the passengers and crew got ready to go into hibernation. The captain set in the coordinates and left the droid to launch them into hyperspace once he and then Crimson were safely settled into their hibernation capsules. 21 light years away, the colony on Judason was doing very well after the defeat of the world controllers. Once the initial battle was over and the colony had buried their own dead, they went back to the valley and did the same for the fatalities of the reborn. The colony members then set about clearing away the wreckage of the spaceship so that the valley could be returned to the way it was before the battle. The only thing that remained there was a memorial plaque which was erected above the burial site for the reborn crew and passengers. It read, 234 crew and passengers of the Reborn, 27 June 2098. Here lies the tortured souls who put themselves above all others. May their arrogance be a reminder to us all to live in peace and care for one another. After the day the plaque was erected, none of the adults went into the valley anymore. However, the older colony children liked to run down the grassy meadow and play upon the sandy beach. 2 of these children were none other than Neon and Teal's oldest son and daughter, Thorn and Willow. Much like his father, Thorn was looked upon as a leader by the rest of the colony children. They always sought his protection if they were scared. So, when a spaceship suddenly appeared in the valley and landed on the grass before them, they all ran to Thorn in fear. He signaled them to go as fast as they could back to the city and inform his father and their parents about the ship. He and Willow decided to stay behind and hide in the bushes that grew near the memorial plaque. They peered out from their hiding place to see what or who would emerge from the ship. While this was happening outside, at the same time on board the vessel, almost everyone had come out of their hibernation and were preparing themselves for the doors of the ship to be opened. However, Crimson was trying to deal with a medical emergency. Something had gone wrong with Indigo's hibernation capsule during the flight. When Crimson opened the lid to her sister's capsule, Indigo lay there, looking very pale and sickly. She was too weak to even stand up, and she had obvious bruising over her body. Her gums were bleeding, and her teeth seemed to be loose. Crimson had no idea what had gone wrong with her sister's flight, nor what she was dealing with. She had never seen such signs and symptoms like this in the years she had worked at the hospital. Bracken came into the room and looked down at Indigo with shock upon his face.
What's happened to her?
I have no idea what we're dealing with, Bracken. Do you think there'll be a doctor in Judason?
Crimson looked at Bracken with a concerned expression. She was at a total loss as to what she could do to help her sister.
Well, I guess we're about to find out. I don't know what the reception is going to be like when they discover we've arrived. I'll go and round up the other rebels and we'll scout the area, see if we can get Indigo some help.
Bracken informed Zacharias to stay on the ship with his family, while he and the other rebels surveyed the area to check it was safe. He then had the group arm themselves with laser guns, and they cautiously opened the door to the spaceship. All the group were shocked and surprised at the view in front of them. Never had they seen green grass growing in an open valley like this, nor ever seen an expanse of ocean that lay beyond it. However, they were also on their guard as they advanced forward with caution. The group stopped at the plaque, and Amos was the first to speak after reading the inscription.
I don't understand what this means.
Well, looks as though the arrival of the world controllers wasn't met with open arms. Either that or the ship crashed while landing. We need to be on our guard, because we have no idea what the reception will be from the Nightwalkers and Takers who have colonized this planet.
No sooner had he said this than they heard a rustling in the bushes nearby. The group pointed their weapons in the direction the sound had come from.
Show yourself with your hands in the air, or I'll shoot you where you are.
Thorn and Willow stood up slowly so that the rebels could see them clearly.
They're children?
Walk over to us with your hands in the air.
The pair did as they were told and stood looking at the rebels with fear in their eyes.
Don't be afraid. My name is Bracken, and we mean you no harm. However, until we know more about you, we need to be wary. What are your names?
Thorn, sir. And this is my sister Willow.
Where are your parents?
The children looked at each other, unsure if they should divulge any more information to the strangers. But they were scared as to what would happen to them if they didn't answer the man.
At the city?
Thorn, I need you to take us to your city. Is there a doctor there? We need a doctor to come to our ship urgently because one of our passengers is very sick.
My father's the doctor, sir.
Oh, thank goodness. Please, can you take me to him?
However, there was no need to do so, because a moment later, Neon, along with a contingent of colony men, turned up heavily armed and ready to fight. For a moment, there was a very tense standoff between the two parties. However, Neon did not want his children to be in the crossfire, so he had his men hold back until they had at least spoken to the newcomers.
Who are you, and where have you come from?
We are from Earth, sir. My name is Bracken, and my group came here with a gentleman by the name of Zacharias and his family. They were left behind when the Reborn last departed. They're good people, sir, and have come to find a new life with you in the colony. And I'm here in the hope of finding my sister, who I have reason to believe was sent here over 10 years ago. Her name is Teal 3463. Have you heard of her?
There was a slight chuckle from a couple of the colony men, but as soon as Neon turned to face them, they stopped immediately.
Well, if you mean us no harm, as you say, let my children return to me now.
As Neon said this, he looked over at Thorn and Willow, who were both standing there quietly next to the rebels. They were unsure as to what they should do while the men exchanged words. Bracken quickly signaled the children to return to their father.
Are you the doctor?
Neon looked a little surprised at this remark, and he peered down at his children questioningly as to how Bracken had learned so much about him in such a short time.
Yes, I am a doctor.
We need you to come to the ship, please, sir. My partner didn't take well from her hibernation. Her sister is a nurse and attending her at the moment, but she asked that I find a doctor because she doesn't know what's wrong with her.
Well, as long as you are happy for my men to accompany us on board the ship, I do not have a problem checking over your patient.
Bracken nodded in confirmation. Neon quickly instructed the children to return to the city before he and the others walked towards the ship, with their laser guns still poised at the ready should they be needed. The rebel leader quickly introduced Neon to Zacharias before taking the group to the hibernation room. The other colony men stood guard outside the door, while Neon followed Bracken inside. Although Crimson had no idea who the man was with Bracken, she seemed relieved at the sight of them.
There has been no change in Indigo's condition.
Crimson, this is Neon. He's the colony's doctor.
Neon acknowledged Crimson with a nod as he walked forward to examine the patient. Indigo looked up at him weakly while he took a laser scanner out of his pocket and switched it on. He then ran the scanner over her entire body. Once this was done, Neon placed a connecting pin from the scanner into the side of his data watch.
That is odd, but according to the calculations in the scanner and the information on my data watch, it appears that your sister is suffering from scurvy.
Scurvy? I've never heard of it.
No, you probably wouldn't have. The disease has not been around for centuries. It is caused by a lack of vitamin C. Have you checked the programming of supplements for your sister's hibernation capsule yet?
I keep the codes for the capsule myself, but I haven't rechecked it since we landed.
Neon went over to the control panel for the hibernation capsule and pressed on the keypad. Sure enough, he quickly picked up that the patient had not received the correct dosage of vitamin C for the length of the voyage. When he informed Crimson of the error, she broke into tears.
I must have been distracted by the fighting outside of the ship before we left. That was the time I was programming the codes into Indigo's capsule. Is she gonna die?
No, she will be fine. Now we know what condition she is suffering from. It will take time for her body to compensate after the vitamin imbalance. Please calm yourself and show me where you keep your drug supplies so we can administer a dose of vitamin C to your patient.
Neon walked over and put his hand on Crimson's shoulder to reassure her. Once she had regained her composure, she showed him to the drugs cabinet. He took the appropriate medical supplies from the stores and administered a shot of vitamin C into Indigo. Neon then asked Crimson to set up IV infusion of fluids and pain relief. When he had finished treating their patient, Neon turned to Bracken and told him he'd like to speak with Zacharias. The other colony men followed behind them as Bracken took Neon to the spaceship's lounge. When Zacharias' children saw the men holding up their laser guns, they were afraid and went to hide behind their mother. After seeing the incident with the hobos before they left Earth, the children were scared of seeing strangers with weapons. Neon quickly signaled for the men to put their guns away. He had pretty well decided that the people on board the spaceship were of no threat, and the last thing he wanted to do was scare little children. He then asked Zacharias if they could have a private meeting away from the rest of his family. Once they were led to another room, Neon began to question the tycoon.
Bracken has informed me that you were meant to have arrived at Judason on the Reborn several months ago, sir. I find this information rather disturbing. Therefore, I need you to tell me what your connection is to the World Controllers, and why did your plans change from taking that voyage?
Of course, at this early stage of their meeting, Zacharias was totally unaware what had happened to the passengers of the Reborn. He assumed that Neon was a member of the World Controllers, and with this thought, Zacharias was a little apprehensive about what he should say in return.
I am a financial benefactor to the Judason Project. I thought it a worthwhile cause to help known criminals start a better life on a new planet, where they would not be judged, and where they could make a good future for themselves and those that follow them to Judason thereafter. That is why I offered my financial assistance to the scheme when the evaluator approached me about the World Controller's plans. Unfortunately, there was a misunderstanding about the departure date of the Reborn, and we missed the flight.
So you were fully aware of the plan to terminate all Nightwalkers and Takers an hour before the Reborn was to land on Judason.
When Neon said this, his eyes narrowed a little with anticipation of what Zacharias' answer was going to be.
I'm sorry. I really have no idea of what you're talking about. Bracken, do you know what this man is referring to?
No, sir. I'm as shocked as you are hearing this information.
There was no denying that the look of dismay upon Bracken and Zacharias' faces could only mean they had no knowledge of the plan the World Controllers had devised. Neon sighed quietly with relief. He really didn't want to have the tycoon terminated for his treachery and leave his family with no husband or father.
Well, sir, had Bracken had a chance to speak with you before our conversation, he would have informed you that everyone upon the flight you were originally to take are dead. We discovered that the World Controllers had planned to have everyone on Judason over the age of 10 eliminated by the droids, an hour before the Reborn was to land. We, the members of the colony, took it upon ourselves to ensure this would not happen. So you see, your missed departure upon the Reborn has been to your salvation. As much as it pained us to take all the lives on board the spaceship, we had no other option. But if you have come to settle on Judason with your family and join us in what we have created here, we can accommodate you. Might I also add, the use of your spacecraft would be a welcome asset. Given the vast distance to other continents on Judason, we have yet to discover what they can offer the colony. However, if we can use your spacecraft for this task, it will be a great advance for us to accomplish this mission.
Of course, of course. My ship is most definitely at your disposal. And might I say, had I been aware of the World Controller's plot to eradicate you, I would never have financed their mission. I might be an astute businessman, but I am no murderer.
I'm glad to hear it. Well, now we are all on the same playing field. Unless you have any more questions, I'll make arrangements for you all to be escorted to the city. Once there, I'll arrange a meeting with the members of the colony, so that you and those on your mission can be formally introduced to everyone.
I'll stay here with Indigo and Crimson while the rest of the crew and passengers go to the city. However, before you leave, Neon, there's one question I have for you. It's the same question I asked you earlier outside, and you haven't yet answered. Have you heard of my sister, Teal? I want to know if my mission to come here has been in vain.
I will check my patient list when I return home, and let you know when I come back to the ship later tonight to check on the patient. Once she is feeling a little better, we will transfer Indigo to the hospital wing at the city's medical center.
As much as Neon wanted to let his brother-in-law know who he was and that Teal was well and safe, he decided to keep the fact a secret from Bracken a little longer, at least until he had time to tell Teal he had something to show her. She had talked to him often about her kid brother and how much she missed him and feared for his well-being. Neon was looking forward to watching their reunion after so many years apart. An hour later, there was a large crowd of colony members at the communal center. They chatted amongst themselves while waiting for Neon to take up his position on the platform in front of them. When he did so, their chatter quickly began to diminish until the large room became totally quiet apart from the occasional baby's cry, which was soon hushed.
Good citizens of Judason, as some of you would have already been told by the children who were playing in Reborn Valley a few hours ago, we had a spaceship land there from Earth. I have been to speak with those on board this ship, and I'm satisfied that they have come to Judason with only the best of intentions. They wish to join our colony and live in peace alongside us. Therefore, without further ado, I would like you to give them a warm welcome to our city, and in return, we can utilize their ship to explore more continents on this wonderful planet of ours. Thank you for your attention.
There was an excited murmur from the crowd as Zacharias, his family, and the rest of the crew from the ship were made welcome. Once the formalities were over, Neon asked Noah, one of the colony leaders, if he would show the new members around some of the city, and more importantly, to the vacant pods which had been initially built to accommodate the world controllers. He would have managed this task himself, but he wanted to return to the ship and check on his new patient. Neon asked Teal to join him on his visit. He used the excuse that she would be of comfort to the sick young woman. The 2 crescent moons of Judason shone down on the couple as they sat upon a skybike heading towards Reborn Valley. It was the first time in ages that Teal had been able to spend time alone with her partner. With a community to take charge of and 6 children to care for, the couple were kept very busy. Teal relished every moment of having Neon to herself while they flew silently through the partially moonlit sky. Her mind cast back to the first day she had laid eyes on Neon, when she woke from her hibernation on arriving at Judason. So much had happened in the past 10 years, the memory almost seemed a blur now. It didn't take them long to pull up next to the spaceship. The night lights on the ship were dimmed to conserve power, so at first Teal couldn't see clearly the features of the tall man as he strode towards them.
How's our patient doing?
She seems a little brighter now. Thank you, sir.
I'm glad to hear it. Well, I'll leave you 2 to talk while I tend to my patient. After 10 years, I assume you both will have a lot to catch up on.
Bracken let out a sudden cry of happiness as he realized that the passenger on the skybike was none other than his sister. And Teal, well, even in the dim light of the spaceship and the moons, Neon could sense her absolute elation at finally being reunited with her kid brother. The end.